And welcome to the Gooner Talk. Back in with you guys for another show, for another raw reaction show, and when the show basically which I react to a lot of the latest news. I'm so bright on this screen, Jesus Christ. The sun clearly showing up all the imperfections of my face. But yeah, we're basically going to react to all the latest news, including to what some people might see as fantastic news in terms of Ozil, and some really irritating news in terms of some of the deals that we've been doing or the lack of deals that are going on at the moment. So thank you to everyone who's joining us live in that live chat. Hi, Alan Dos Santos. Nice to have you here, mate. But we're here to talk about a couple of things. So if we start off with the latest news, hi, Beerus, which is talking about Mesut Özil. Shane, thank you for joining me, mate. Mesut Özil obviously been at the club for a long time, since 2013, since he was signed, and since going on to that 350 grand a week deal we saw him go on to, he's not really cut it for that amount of money. I mean, some people would argue he's not cut it before he went on to that deal as well. So there's two sides to that story. I'm sort of in the middle with it. I think we got a player that ultimately took us to a level where we achieved trophies again at the FA Cup. And if we hadn't have signed him, I think we might have seen more of a decline in that sense. But ultimately, I don't think you could say the deal is a huge success because of the lack of consistency in the player. I think that's very obvious. And now the rumours are, or the massive argument is that people want him to leave. They think the 350 grand a week contract was way too high inflated, way too much for a player that doesn't give you enough on a consistent basis, especially in the big games and away games as well. And so the fact that if we were to try and get him off the wage bill means that we can then do more business in the transfer market. People on the whole, I think, were very much in favour of this happening. Now, the latest news is that supposedly Fenerbahce are in for a loan deal in which they would obviously pay a portion of his wages. And this has obviously split people down the middle. Let's see what some of you guys are saying. Jack Perry in the chat says, I'm in the middle too. Still love Ozil and think he's one of the most creative players to wear the Arsenal shirt. He's still been a part of some of our favourite goals. He has, and that's why it splits us. But unfortunately, I think that a lot of us can agree that if we were able to get rid of that 350 grand a week burden and even possibly get a transfer fee in as well, it would enable Arsenal then to accelerate some of their transfer plans. I think the deal for Zaha could be done much simpler. And also we could then restructure our wage plans because he's so far away and ahead. The other players in the team who obviously are clearly contributing a lot more, when we come to sign deals, they're going to turn around and say, well, this is a guy that's not performing in away games and you're paying him way and far beyond what you're paying us. So we want to be paid that much. And that is an issue. So the whole deal with Fenerbahce coming in and saying we'll pay some of his wages and take him on loan. I'm not too sure if it's a year or 2 years, if it was to happen. And it's only obviously down to whether you believe the speculation or not. I think that there's two ways to look at it. You can look at it one way and saying if it's just a loan for a season, okay. If it's a loan with an obligation to buy Ozil next season, that changes the landscape completely. If it's just a loan for a single year, for me, I don't think it's worth it. Two reasons for that. The first one is that you've still got a player there who's on a lot of money and we'd still have to pay a fair portion of his wages. And for just a year, when you're going to get him back anyway, still on a long-term contract, there's not much point because he can do a job. He can contribute, for sure, to this team, and he has shown that last season in games like the game against Leicester, for instance, where he can do something. But if it's a case where Fenerbahce would have an obligation to purchase Ozil next season, I think that would make complete sense to do. If there's any way, in possibility to get him off the wage bill, sell him at a lower price next season, and get him in a place where basically we can invest or reinvest some of that money and restructure our wage bill, the opportunity to do that, I don't think is something that Arsenal can miss out on. Now, you then have to ask the question, do you trust the club to actually reinvest in the money that we make back? I struggle to think that they would effectively do that based on the evidence we've seen, not just this summer so far, but in previous seasons as well. And I don't think it's a case where you can turn around and say that they're confidently going to do that. And I don't think that Ozil wants to leave either. I think he wants to remain in London. I think he wants to remain and see out the duration of what is an unbelievable contract. Now, you'd say, yes, he's going to get paid the same at Fenerbahce because we would subsidise some of those wages, but it's still not in anywhere near as clear that he would want to leave anyway to go to Turkey, to a country where, yes, he's got a lot of affiliation with, and that's caused him a lot of issues in the German national side. But he loves London. He wants to stay in London. Obviously, he's just got married as well very recently. And he's going to be fairly settled here. So it's going to be very, very difficult to sort of get him out of that. Then we move on to the Saliba stuff, and I'll keep coming back to your question as well. The Saliba stuff is GFFN, Get French Football Now. Dark Zero has just put in our chat saying, breaking, Arsenal agree 30 million deal to sign William Saliba from Saint Etienne. Subject to finalisation of bonus structure, player will stay at Saint Etienne next season. Interesting. Please, if you go GFFN, and check if that's true or not. But they're fairly good with their French stuff. But the case is, and the news is, that we're understanding is that the deal to sign Saliba would be in that fee of around £30 million. But the good side of this, and something which it took a lot of people not in the wrong way, and people were very, there was a lot of animosity towards this deal because of the fact he will be returning to them on loan next season, is that the structure of the deal means that we won't pay too much of that £30 million this summer. And in fact, we'd be obligated to pay it next summer when he really joins, which is hugely beneficial. It doubles the attractiveness, even more so, of this deal for a lot of people, because it means it's not going to eat into our transfer budget for this summer. We're going to be getting a player that is extremely highly rated. You don't see too many 18-year-olds, especially centre-halves, going for that much money, other than the likes of Matthias de Ligt, who's going for just under 60 million, it seems, to Juventus. So it goes to show how highly rated they think William Saliba really is. And the fact that this deal can be done and we don't have to pay too much this season, and it will be, in fact, next season, when hopefully you'd see us, fingers crossed, get into that Champions League and be in a better financial position. I just think that in terms of how reliable that is, I see it happening. I was less confident last week. I didn't think that we would do it because you saw these other clubs sort of sniffing around and seeing that he was available. But the fact that we can get him in, we can send him back on loan to get first-team experience, because that's really key for me. It's like, yes, I think he would have come in and got games, but the fact he will be on in the Liga, which is, whilst I'm not the biggest fan of Liga, physicality-wise, it is very similar to the Premier League. It's a very physical league, so that will help his development to no end, and playing regular football will as well. And keeping the player happy, he seemed to think that he wanted to stay there as well. Let's see what some of the guys you're saying about that deal then. All Things Arsenal says, Saliba seems like a player that will explode in value with a great performance next season. It makes sense if Arsenal is planning ahead of time to get him cheaper. 100%, mate, I agree with you. Arin says, if that's the case, it's not a signing to go against this season. It's literally a sign for next season. Where are the centre-back signings for this season? Yeah, of course, that is the other thing, is that we really do need defensive reinforcements, 100%, and that's the only sort of person we've been linked to in that area. We got linked a bit with Izzo, but those links have gone quiet. We got linked with Dan Axel Zagadou. Those links have gone quiet as well. It does concern me that we're really lacking. And the next topic of this video is talking about more concerns with someone else that's been on our radar. Now, Kieran Tierney has been on Arsenal's radar for a long time, and this summer this story has rumbled on with even Facebook posts of his mates saying that he's staying, getting into the media. That's how desperate this is becoming. And to see that happen, and to see that this deal is stalling and that Arsenal are supposedly balking at the price, is really, really idiotic. It's so frustrating as an Arsenal fan to see it happen when you're throwing out £40 million for Zaha, you're throwing out £30 million bids for players that we might not get, although we might not pay some of that this season, of course, but it's still happening. And we're throwing out bids for other players, but we can't seem to add just that little bit extra and go that little bit further just so we can get this deal done. To not get Kieran Tierney done this season will cause absolute pandemonium among the fans. Absolute pandemonium to not get Kieran Tierney, to be linked with a guy this long, to lose out to someone like Napoli when you only have a few extra £1 million to make sure this deal happens, to get one of the most highly rated left-backs across Europe in terms of his age. And he is, and if you go and research him or you watch the video when I did the tactical breakdown of him, you'll see how good he is as a left-back. So to miss out on him would be hugely detrimental and damaging not only to the fans' morale, but the club's defensive capabilities next season. Kolasinac is great going forwards, but defensively he is hugely flawed. Monreal is coming in to the end of his tenure at Arsenal. There's even possible links to say even though he has signed a new deal, it's possible that he could still be sold, which would boost us in terms of finances. But I think he can do more of a job, ironically, than Kolasinac can, arguably. And so there you go. But let's have some of your questions that are going to come in before I close this all up. A lot of you are posting in the chat saying the Saliba deal is done, which is great news. We've already covered that a little bit to say I think the fact that we're going to get him on the cheap this season and then obviously see him integrate into the squad next season is great. Arun says to miss out on Kieran would be criminal. Most of our attacking play comes from the wings and Unai Emery. From Unai Emery, should I say. And so we need this done, 100%, mate. Peace Tembo says Arsenal might look at Ricardo Rodriguez from AC Milan as an alternative. Yeah, Rodriguez obviously mid to late 20s. I think he's 26, 27 from memory. Correct me if I'm wrong. He had a couple of good seasons, did well at Wolfsburg, obviously, before he went to Milan. But he's just not the type of player that I want. He's too passive for me. I want someone like who's explosive, like Tierney. I want someone like Tierney who runs up and down that line, who's excellent creative-wise. And we need someone like that in the Arsenal team that not only provides that offence, but gives us the stability at the back. And we're desperate for someone like Kieran Tierney. So to not go out and get that would be hugely detrimental. Rich K1 says the end product is the problem with these things at the win-backs and that Arsenal have right now. So, yeah, we do have problems with that. But ironically, Hector Bellerin was having an absolutely fantastic season before he got his injury or his couple of injuries. And were he to go on to play the rest of the season, he could have been up there with the same numbers of Trent Alexander-Arnold or Robertson from last season. So I have no doubt that in Bellerin coming back stronger next season and having him and Tierney, the creativity from that side on both wing-back positions would be absolutely huge. Carrying on then, Arun, do you think that we need a defensive midfielder as Torreira will be missing from the start of the season? It's hard to say because we don't know for sure if he'll be missing. Obviously, he's been away at the Copa America. I know you spelled Bielik absolutely. Oh, you didn't spell it wrong. Bielik, B-I-E-L-I-K. Simple as that. But in terms of do we need backup? No, I don't think we do. I think that the only midfield signing we need to make is one to replace Ramsey. If you were asking me who that would be, it would be Danny Ceballos all day. But it's going to bring me to absolute tears if we see him go to Tottenham, which would be really frustrating. And then obviously you've got the likes of Christian Bielik, which people will start arguing about his spelling in the chat, who is a really, really great prospect. But the news doesn't seem to be positive about him staying. The news seems to be that Christian Bielik will not be at Arsenal next season and that we'll see him leave. And if he does, we need to be getting at least 10 million for this guy. At least. He's a fantastic prospect, that we should see playing there. Robert Fenton says there was talk of Klosterman, but it's gone quiet. Yeah, very, very good RB Leipzig right back, of course, that we could have gone for. But again, I think being that right back position, we don't need someone like Klosterman. We need someone like a Dani Alves just to come in for that season and give Rebella in the backup that he needs. Not a Lichtsteiner, not someone that's slow and passive. More like Dani Alves for a season where I thought would have been an absolutely fantastic signing. Haribo 73 says, afternoon Tom, hopefully Ozil can go as I'm sick of seeing his mopey face. Brilliant. Tashi says, is Zaha a priority for this season? We should instead add more to the Tierney deal. Saliba would be positive signing and Bielik must be given a chance instead of Xhaka. Yeah, very interesting. Very, very interesting. I just think that Zaha as a deal, for instance, is not going to happen because of the logistics and the finances behind it. The only thing that I can ever see it happening is if it basically becomes very ugly and Zaha pushes hugely for the deal, then there's a small chance that they could lower their asking price because they want an unhappy player at the club. And they can do a lot of money with the money that they could get in. Arun says, if we only make 2 signings this window, which 2 positions should be given the most priority? A centre-back, 100%, and a centre midfielder for me, because I just think we're losing so much in Ramsey and we're lacking so much. When you look at the midfielders we now have without Ramsey, we've got Xhaka, we've got Guendouzi, we've got El Neni, we've got Torreira in the midfield, Joe Willock, Bielik. These guys are good, other than the likes of El Neni, for instance. I mean, Xhaka divides opinion, but he can do a job. And I just think that how you can go into a Premier League season with those as your choices for centre midfield is extremely naive. I'm not convinced by Willock, as all things Arsenal says there. And obviously, we've got Ozil as well, we've talked about, but he's too inconsistent. To not bring in a centre midfielder or an attacking centre midfielder like Nabil Fekir, for instance, who can play in that role as well, I just find it maddening that we're not strengthening in that centre midfield area. I think it's absolutely huge. Pablo Amar says put Ainsley Maitland-Niles in midfield. Yeah, it's a shout, but again, it's a risk, and I'd rather bring in someone who can do a job and is established and hit the ground running. Cameron Brooks says, but can we get more goals and assists from Tierney and Zaha? Yes, we arguably could. Between them, they would chip in with a lot more. And Claude, nice to have you in the chat, mate. Same old players, same old mentality. Yeah, it's really frustrating, mate. It really is, not to see these players being brought in properly and brought in ruthlessly. I mean, we need to add that little bit extra. Tashi Tenzing says, what's your opinion on the João Felix signing? Is he worth 126 million? He's not worth 126 million right now, but there's huge potential that he could be in the future. And unfortunately, Benfica weren't going to let him go. And Atletico are going to have the money because Griezmann is going to be sold, and is going to be sold for around 100 million as well. So the deal makes sense, even though it's an extremely high price. What else do we have coming in? Haruba says the names you've read out in midfield don't have any attacking flair at all. Yeah, you're 100% right. They don't. Ozil is the only sort of attacking player that can do that. We just don't have anyone in that position that's got any sort of attack or verve in that midfield. And without Ramsey in the team towards the end of the season with his injury, I'm going to throw this out there, and you might call me mad for it, but Aaron Ramsey's injury is the reason that we did not get top four and did not get Europa League. And that is it. That is it. Like, without that extra flair in the midfield, we were so lackluster, we were so blunt, and we just didn't have that extra bit of verve. Now, you can disagree with me all you like, and it wasn't for that, but without that, our midfield was so passive and so raw that we just didn't have that extra little bit on it. Where are we going? Where are we going with this? George Mutson says, do you think the Ziyech release clause rumour is true? No, I don't. It's not true. He doesn't have that 25 million release clause that was in the media. That is completely wrong. Anthony Christoph Joseph says, is Ozil going? Well, that's the rumour. Fenerbahce supposedly putting up a loan deal for the German. Rich K1 says, I think they should delay the starting of the Premier League season for Arsenal to sort themselves out. Brilliant. And I think we'll go for a couple more and then we'll go. Ingars says, Ricardo Pereira at right back. Thoughts? Yeah, fantastic right back. I don't think Leicester would sell. I mean, you look what they're doing with Harry Maguire, being offered 70 million for the guy, and they don't need to sell him because they're financially very stable and they're in a really, really good position in the league. So they don't need to do that. They really don't. And Dion Carr says Fekir would be a great replacement for Ramsey. I completely agree with you. And to finish things off, Tashi says, will you be fumed if Arsenal don't make any signings before the US tour? Will I be fuming? No, I won't be fuming. I'll be frustrated. I'll be fuming if we don't make no signs by the time we've finished it. And I think that'd be absolutely, and that's not including the Saliba deal because he's not a player that's coming in next season. I hope you've really enjoyed the show. If you have, please give it a like. And I hope you have a fantastic rest of the evening or morning or wherever you are listening to this video on playback. Thank you ever so much for the over 200 of you that listened in the stream. I really appreciate it. So please give it a like if you can. And sorry if I missed any of your questions. Yam Drum Gun, I'm really sorry if I missed some of your questions, mate. Clearly you're a bit annoyed. I genuinely didn't see them. But yeah, cheers everyone who's been listening. We'll see you again tomorrow, maybe for a tactical breakdown if we get linked to someone new that people want to know about, or another raw reactions if there's something to break down. I hope you enjoyed the season breakdown I did with Hugh Wizzy, and I hope you appreciated some of the pre-recorded content I did over the weekend, which were clearly quite well timed because I was on holiday, so that all had to be done pre-holiday. So I hope you enjoyed all of that as well. We'll see you again very soon, and as always, up the Arsenal.